into the unknown, into the unseen, the unexplainable, and the unbelievable. Join our strange journeys. Are you ready?
So tell us about that. Tell us about that sighting, Tim. Don't just gloss over it now.
My experience with that is that she was walking along the creek,
Yeah.
and I was just trying to. I caught a glimpse of her. My sighting was not great, but to me, it was like, this is the proof that she's still out here, that she's still walking along, still making herself known. So.
Oh, good. All right, and one of your other popular tales is the Kansas Capitol. What about the Kansas Capitol that makes it so popular?
The Kansas State Capitol is actually built. They start building it in 1861. They finish the main portion of the building and they give up for 8 years. If you go on tours of the Capitol now, they will not tell you any ghost stories from the Kansas Capitol. There are as many as 11 spirits, though, inside the building. It has a very interesting history. The Kansas State Capitol has the only capitol in the United States that has a mass murderer and convicted treasonist painted as a mural on the wall, because we've got a huge painting of John Brown on the second floor of the Capitol. In 1967, there's a lady that commits suicide inside the Kansas State Capitol building. On July 11th, she's taking a tour of the Capitol. She is about 100.
Oh, we locked up again.
It's a pillar that she braces herself on as she climbs up on the rail. She places her shoes underneath the rail and she jumps. As she is falling, she doesn't scream at all. In fact, there was a janitor mopping the floor inside the rotunda, and if she had not hit the second floor balcony railing, she would have killed him on the way down. She actually hits the second floor balcony. She bounces off of that. She takes off her left arm. She hits his mop bucket, which back then was metal, and scraped the right side of the face all the way down to the bone. She is still seen inside the Kansas Capitol to this day, usually walking along muttering to herself. We've got a senator from here in Kansas, one of the state senators, that won't work in his office by himself late at night because his office is the original bank vault for the city of Topeka. And he was working late one evening as she tried to push the bank vault door closed on him. He jumped up and ran around and grabbed the door, and it was actually swinging. At which point they found out they don't even have the combination to that safe anymore. So it would have been a long time cutting him out of his own office. But he won't work by himself for fear of seeing him.
And that janitor.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was, I'm sorry, I just had to laugh when he was like, nope, I'm done.
Yeah, he walks he goes home after the suicide. He comes back the next time that he has to come into work, and he says as he's walking in, he sees her standing in the very spot that she hit the floor. And he said, I'm not working here anymore. I need to be transferred to a different building. Now, the interesting part about that is they actually only transfer him to an office building across the street. He's not even a block away from where it is. And he retired in 2000. I think it's 2007 he retires, and the Kansas State governor requested his presence at the Capitol building to present him with this award for the number of years that he'd worked for the state of Kansas, because he'd worked for them more than 50 years. and he refused to come to the Capitol building. He made the governor come to him in the other building because he didn't want to encounter the ghost that was inside the Capitol building.
No, but that and then like I said, when it happened, when she fell and everything was, he was like, "I'm out.
No, I'm done. I'm going home.
I am not mopping that floor."
Right. So.
All right, and all right, from the book, your favorite story.
Um, Honestly, I like the stories of the Jayhawk Theater the most. The Jayhawk Theater is a historic theater in Topeka. It's built in 1925. It was the first theater in the United States to have central heat and central air conditioning.
Wow.
Now, to let you know what central air conditioning was, in 1925, they took a giant block of ice and blew the condensation through the building with fans. It has done a
Yeah,
huge amount of damage to the building. They're in the
I
process
bet.
of renovating it now, but the cost is somewhere near $6 million. It's going to be a massive project to undergo.
Must have been mold and mildew everywhere.
Uh, they stopped using it finally in like 1988 was
Yeah.
the year they quit using it. The group that is redoing the building is doing a great job. But over the years, you have a suicide that happens there. You
Yeah.
have a stage manager who dies of a heart attack on the stage late at night by himself.
Wow.
You've got a homeless guy that commits or that dies of exposure in the alley right behind it. That would be 2012, I think, is when he passes away.
Man.
So you've got lots of spirits that are traveling through there. And as I'm out doing tours, it's lots of fun when I get to the Jayhawk Theater and I'm telling stories, especially if there's an
Yeah.
event going on, because the people inside the Jayhawk Theater will come out and tell their experiences
Oh,
to the
cool.
people. And one of the first instances this happened to me, I was actually out there and I'm telling about the ghost of the lady that committed suicide inside the building. In 1933, she commits suicide inside the Jayhawk Theater. She was part of a traveling musical that came through the city of Topeka, and she was released from the theater company when they got to the city of Topeka. She had just found out that she was pregnant. She was an unwed mother,
Ooh.
and in the 30s, that was frowned upon completely. And so,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, she decides to commit suicide inside the Jayhawk Theater. She's staying inside the Jayhawk Hotel, which is right next door. There are no locks between the two buildings. She enters the building, goes up in the balcony, and jumps from the balcony into the chairs below. It's about a
Yeah.
40-foot drop, but the impact did not kill her. She hit the chairs below, and they say it took
Oh
anywhere for 3 to 4 hours for her to bleed out on
Oh
the chairs.
God,
Um,
no.
and so
Holy cow.
that would
um,
have been horrible.
the upper offices of the building now belong to the Kansas Department of Corrections. And one of the officers that works in that building says that he will not he will not ride the elevators. The very first day he went to work, he gets in the elevators and the doors closed. And he could hear a woman sobbing in the elevator right next to him. He looks over and there's nobody there. He
Huh.
walks up and down all the flights of stairs now. He's been there for about 15 years now. Goes up and down every flight of steps because he does not want to encounter it. He says if somebody is
Wow.
crying in the building down the hall, he will send somebody else out. You go look. Um, um,
Oh, wow.
now,
Oh, God.
what we've experienced with the tours is we actually have an incident here, would be almost 2 years ago now, where two of the guys were going through and they were just making sure that everybody was gone at the end of the night. And one of them saw a woman wearing a black dress run up the stairs, and he's like, well, "What in the world?" But the chain to the balcony level was still in place, and it was swinging back and forth, which it shouldn't have been doing. And he
Uh-oh.
said that he heard somebody yell, and he and the other guy went up the opposite stairs to get up to the balcony level, and there was nobody up there that they could find. They went through the
Wow.
bathrooms and everything up there. And so they're like, the first time one of them heard me tell that story is like, that's her. That's the woman that I keep seeing inside this building. So,
Wow. So that you actually had people on the tour that worked there?
right.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. So it's lots of fun. That they come out and they'll visit with us when they're in there. The Jayhawk Theater is doing about 2 or 3 events inside the building per month at
Yeah.
this point, trying to raise the money so that they can do the rest of the renovations that they're doing. I know that
Yeah.
yesterday they were talking about newspapers were talking about the foundation. They're going to redo the foundation this summer. they're looking at $180,000 to redo the foundation of the theater.
Wow. Whew.
So
Yeah, we had a similar thing on tour one night. We were at the Battle House Hotel, and turns out that one of the people on the tour had worked at the Battle House and was able to give us a few stories from there.
right.
All right, well, a couple of things from the book that I wanted to go over before we get to the next book. And folks, the reason we're doing this is one, to share these creepy stories with you, but two, so that you can go to Amazon and find his books. All right, if they're at Amazon, and just type in his name, Tim Shepard, and look
Right.
for Prairie Ghosts and Return to the Prairie, which we'll be talking about some of the Return to the Prairie stories in just a minute here. But one, there was a few in the book that to me had kind of a national or international feel to it,
Right.
not feel, connection. Um, and this one was from, I mean, we've all heard the name Anastasia. And the story of Anastasia has a connection to Kansas.
Yes, it does. Um, Topeka in the early portion of the 19th century had a huge Russian influx. In fact, we have an area that we call Little Russia to this day.
Yeah.
Um, and what happens is that there's a group of Russians that come in right around just shortly after the events that happen in Russia with the Bolshevik Revolution. And some of these people say they see Anastasia among them. Um, but this group did not set up in Little Russia. In fact, they set up about 2 miles outside of the city of Topeka to the west. And they built these two beautiful buildings that are still standing today, one of which has the Minuet Towers on the side of it. I mean, it's really neat to
Wow.
see. Um, and they were out there for about a year to a year and a half that they were at that location. Every time that they would go into town to deal with the markets and stuff, this woman would go with them. But if she was there and anybody tried to approach her, there were armed men with her that would get people to back away from her. What happens though is that somebody from the city of Topeka, which is still not that far out in the, outside of, it hasn't expanded that far to where the houses were located, notices that there is no smoke coming from that area. Nothing is burning. They're not cooking anything. And so they call the local sheriff to go out and investigate. And he sends two deputies out there. And when they get there to the houses, they discover a huge amount of blood that is inside one of the houses. They also,
Wow.
at this point, they bring in more officers to investigate. And they discovered that there are tunnels running away from these houses. As far as the Kansas River to the north, which is about a mile and a half, as far south as what is now the Westridge Mall, which is about a mile away, they had built escape tunnels outside of these buildings.
Huh.
And the thought among some people that have got the wonderful conspiracy theory was that Anastasia was here at some point and they were protecting her. That was the only reason
Wow.
that anybody can think they built those escape tunnels the way that they did.
Well, the timing of it too, because
Right,
this was right
exactly.
after the revolution, right?
Yeah, this is right after the revolution.
And it was
So,
thought that they escaped. Now,
right,
supposedly, some bones that were discovered in Russia, we had DNA testing, and they
right.
feel like they have discovered her bones that she actually died in Russia during the revolution.
Russia says that they have it. The scientist that was in charge of that says that none of those bones are Anastasia's.
Ah,
He says it's not her. That she
okay.
didn't die there, but there were
Uh-oh.
538. They where they're
Okay. You froze up again.
yeah.
So what was it? Repeat that because you froze up.
There are 58 total members of that family that die
Mhm.
or disappear. They've identified 38 of the bodies. There are bodies they have no idea where they are. And so this scientist is saying Anastasia is not among the bones we found.
Oh. But the official stance
From Russia
from the
is that she's
government
dead. Yeah.
is
Is
that
that
she is
she's
dead.
dead and they have her body.
But the scientists don't necessarily
Right.
believe that.
Right.
So there's a possibility that could have been.
Yeah.
And
Could have
Well,
been
for
her.
how many years did her grandmother look for? So she was one who believed that the child was still alive, that she
Yeah.
had never,
yeah.
otherwise she wouldn't have been looking.
Yeah, exactly.
Any thoughts or ideas of where they went to after that, after they disappeared?
Due to the amount of blood that they talk about inside the houses, there's a possibility those, if they killed people, whoever came and did that, killed people inside the building, those bodies could be anywhere. They
Okay,
may have
so
gotten away.
yeah, they may have gotten away, or they may have been
Yeah,
slaughtered there by.
right,
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I thought that was unique about the tunnels
right, right,
going all over the place. So they had plenty of
exactly.
escape routes. So maybe they made it out. And there was one lady that died just a few years back who always said she was Anastasia, but
Right,
when she died, they did a final DNA test and it didn't
right,
match up. So,
right.
but all right, before we go on to the next book, I did want to touch on two more things before we go to the next book. The BTK killer.
Right. Dennis Rader. He is, at one point, they consider him one of the most prolific serial killers in the state of
Right.
Kansas. We've had more than our fair share. Let's make that very clear. What happens is he's actually a resident of the city of Wichita, Kansas. He is worked for the airlines for a little while at Boeing, helping put planes together. He put in security systems in people's houses. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, in the 80s, he decides at one point while he's unemployed, he sees a woman and her daughter walking down the street, and he begins stalking her for a period of about 6 weeks prior to breaking into the house. He thinks the husband and the son have left. When he breaks into the house, he finds out the husband and son are home. He kills the husband first. The killing of the husband took time. He strangled him, thought he was dead. The husband started moving, strangled him a second time. In the meantime, he's bound the son and he's bound the daughter and the wife. Um, he will eventually kill the son with a hammer.
Ew.
He strangles the husband. He takes the daughter downstairs in the house and tortures her down there for hours before she dies. The mother dies in the bed upstairs. Um, he will go on to kill 8 more people during the next 20 years. It's interesting because he got away with it in the 80s, and it isn't until the 2000s when he kills the 2 victims in the 2000s that he makes a reappearance. And
Yeah.
when he does, he starts taunting the police. I've gotten
Writing
away
them
with it for
letters.
so long, I'm going to
Yeah.
keep getting away with it. It gets him caught eventually because he uses, of all things, he's a deacon in a church and he uses
Yeah.
the church's computer to make a disc recording of what he's done.
Oh my gosh.
So
Now, BTK stood for
bind,
bind,
torture, kill.
Yeah.
Kill.
Bind, torture, and kill.
Right.
Wow.
Now, he never raped any of his victims, but he was definitely good at torturing the victims before they would die.
Gosh. All right. We're going to go on to your next book here. Let you go over some of the stories there. Return to the Prairie. Now, you had mentioned that you just had so many stories, you decided you had to make it, you had to come back with
Right.
technically not necessarily a sequel, but almost a
Right.
continuation.
Right.
Book 2 in the series. So
In
what's
particular, I
go
wanted to
ahead.
look at Fort Riley in particular and Lawrence, Kansas, as we were preparing for the Lawrence tours.
Yeah.
We had lots of information there, but I wanted to look at Fort Riley, mostly because you've got the Custer House on Fort Riley, which the one they're using as a Custer house was George
Mhm.
Armstrong Custer never lived in it. Let's make that very clear. We talk about the parade
Yeah.
grounds, the ghosts of the parade grounds, and residents around the parade grounds still say there is a group of soldiers that will come riding in, and they will
Yeah.
arrive, cavalrymen, and they will rush into a house that is believed to actually have been the one Custer lived in while he was at Fort Riley. And there is an incident while he's at Fort Riley. He's supposed to be fighting the Indian Wars in Colorado. He leaves for no apparent reason. He would actually get court-martialed for this and comes all the way back to Kansas. And when they rode in, he and the 4 or 5 men that were with him right inside the house had to do something with the cholera epidemic that was happening at the time period. And so it's a residual haunting where it's just that memory that is playing itself over and over and over again
Right.
of them riding into the parade ground and entering the house. The Custer House itself is this really unique place. It's a beautiful building. It's all original limestone from here in Kansas. It's a
Mm.
three-story structure. They've got a ghost inside the Custer house that, because it is used as a museum, they've got a room for children um, that would be a child's bedroom that has an old
Wow.
wooden rocking horse in it, as well as old stuffed animals. And on camera, beginning in about 19, I want to say as early as the 1980s, they caught it on camera, where the teddy bear would get up off the bed and float across the room and would sit on
Wow.
the rocking chair and rock back and forth as if a child were playing with it. Um, and what got him to look at it was that the curator of the museum kept coming in, and the teddy bear would be on the floor, and he knew that he was putting the teddy bear on the
Yeah.
bed each evening to make sure that it was there. And so they eventually recorded what was happening,
Yeah.
and it's happened over and over again that they continue to record it every few years, where that teddy bear is moving across the room and will sit, and the rocking chair is just moving back and forth.
Holy
Um,
cow.
so
Where can you find that video?
I've seen one on YouTube, so you can certainly look that up for Fort Riley
Yeah.
Ghosts. I know that at one point here recently, Fort Riley pulled down all their videos temporarily
Yeah.
while they were redoing the Custer House and the World War II Museum, or U.S. Cavalry Museum, were both being remodeled last year. And so they pulled things down. I haven't looked to see if they put them back up yet. That'd be neat to see, but I need to check on that. Um,
Yeah. Okay. Well, what are some of the other top stories in that Return to the Prairie?
we talk about Building 99 or Quarters 99 on Fort Riley.
Yeah.
What happens is that I grew up part of my life on Fort Riley. My father was a United States Army chaplain. We lived up on the hill, um, but the original base sits down below, and it was all those buildings that are down there were built in the 1860s all the way through about the 1890s, and they're the old limestone. Quarters 99, there's been multiple families that have lived inside the same housing unit. The buildings were originally designed to be one officer's home, and they have broken those down to like being two family quarters now.
Right.
Um, but the families that have lived in Quarters 99 talk about that they'll hear water running upstairs and go upstairs and the bathtub is full, as if somebody was going to
Oh.
take a bath, or they'll hear footsteps coming from the attic level and walking all the way down to the basement. Um, and it's everybody that has lived in Quarters 99 experiences that over time. One lady talked about that she thought her husband had come home, that he had left to go to PT in the morning. This would be in the early 2000s, that he left to
Uh,
go to PT in the morning, and he would usually use the basement entrance to come into the house, and she could hear his boots coming up the stairs and sat there waiting for him to come inside.
wow.
It stopped right outside the kitchen door where she was sitting having her coffee. And she just kept waiting and finally went and opened the door thinking that he was doing something, and there's nobody down there. She walked all the way back down to the basement. The basement door was locked. Um,
Wow.
she's the same woman that says that something knocked her down the stairs one day from the first floor to the basement level, that she was
Holy
standing there
cow.
when something brushed past her as if it was
Yeah.
in a hurry going down the stairs. Um,
Wow. Man. Yeah, then you say Building 99. Where is that?
That's on Fort Riley, is where that is. It's Quarters 99. It's the same. They call it Building 99 or Quarters 99. It's
That's right. I remember that in the book
yeah,
now.
on the main post itself, prior to them expanding up onto the hill where
Yeah,
most everything is now.
it's just a building on Fort Riley.
Right.
All right. What about the Lawrence Massacre hauntings?
There are about 5 buildings in Lawrence that are haunted at this point. Um, we frequent a building called the Toy Store. It's a 3-story building that survived the Lawrence Massacre. Um, to give you some background on that, in 1863, on August 21st, a man named William Quantrill raided Lawrence. He brought with him approximately 500 men. Their goal was to slaughter an abolitionist town.
Yeah.
Lawrence was known for its abolitionism. It also had some of the Jennison's Jayhawkers were based out of Lawrence. Jim Lane was out of Lawrence, and so they wanted to kill these guys. And as they came into town, they had picked up a group of Confederate cavalry that came with them. They started out with only 80 of them. By the time they got to Lawrence, there were more than 500. They included
Wow.
Frank and Jesse James were both there. Um, so you've got Frank and Jesse James. You have Bloody Bill Anderson. Some of the most notorious, Cole Younger is there. Jim Younger is with him. Robert Younger was very likely there, even though he was much younger than the rest of the brothers. So you've got this huge group that come in, and they kill approximately 250 men inside the city of Lawrence.
Holy cow.
It is a brutal slaughter. They leave only 3 or 4 buildings standing by the time it's over. It's a nasty event. In fact, it would, for decades afterwards, it would echo through history because of what happens there. But they would leave no one alive. Any males that they found, they killed. There were men that escaped it. Jim Lane actually escaped. Jennison's Jayhawkers were elsewhere, so they were not there when they got there. But the stories of brutality were just amazing to have read through. But the toy store sits on Massachusetts Avenue in the city of Lawrence. It was a main street even then. It is a 3-story structure, and it's called the Toy Store. It's a massive toy store. It's one of the greatest places to take the grandkids to. We go in there and just let them go because they're going to find toys on every floor, things that they'll be interested in. But they regularly hear and see a spirit that is moving throughout the building. Probably one of the men that was killed during that massacre happening inside the city. I do know that just down the street from there is 1313 Mockingbird Lane, which we've advertised for on the show. His original building was haunted as well, and he talked to me about that he would see somebody on a regular basis walking towards the window of that. Now, the building wasn't there at the time of the massacre. In fact, the building that was there on that block was the blacksmith shop. And they actually took 5 men down to where the blacksmith shop was and executed them right where the blacksmith shop was.
Wow.
And so I think that the one that is at that location is probably one of those people that they massacred right there in front of that building, where that store is. But you've got a couple houses as well. One belongs to a University of Kansas professor. It's on New England Avenue. It was one of the only ones to survive the massacre, and it belonged to Reverend Cordley. Cordley was not killed in that particular event. He would die years later, and in fact, he wrote one of the best books about the Lawrence Massacre that was out there. But what happens is that Cordley flees and hides out in his basement. And they were going to kill him inside. They walked right past him. He could have reached out. He says he could have reached out and touched these men, was how close they were to him. His wife actually drug him out of the house with a rug over the top of him. He crawled underneath the rug while she was pulling the rug out of the house. And he laid underneath the rug, and then they started piling furniture on top of that to continue to hide him. The current owner of the house talks about that the house itself, he sees people all the time. In fact, he sees a balding man that walks down the stairs And so I think that based on the description he's given, that's probably Reverend Cordley even years later coming down that. But it's left this bloody history on the city
Yeah.
itself. Um,
Wow. Yeah, I am sure. And they have, other than the seeing the ball man, they have other sightings there as well.
yes, they sure do. In fact, when we do our tour, we do some ghost hunts along the tour routes as well.
Uh-huh.
That one there, they do right inside it's called now I got to think of what it is. Wesley Park, which is directly across from the town's library.
Yeah.
Now, he was the mayor at the time of the massacre, and his house stood where the city park is today. He was not killed during the massacre itself. He died as the massacre was happening, though, because he and a friend dove into the well underneath the house. And as the house burned down around them, the smoke went down inside the well and killed them. Um,
Wow.
but guests on our tours will get all kinds of answers with dowsing rods as well as
Yeah.
EVPs while they're out there, because he'll visit with them and talk with them and let them know. You can ask him questions. So, did you die during
Wow.
the massacre? And he'll say no. Did you die as a result of the massacre? He'll say yes. So,
Okay. From hiding in the well. So
right,
basically he's saying, no,
yeah,
I didn't die in the massacre, but because of the
right.
massacre.
But
Yeah.
because of the massacre,
Yeah.
um,
Wow. That's amazing. And so folks, you're hearing it firsthand from Tim, the stories that are in these books. I'm going to show you again where to find that. Go over here to Amazon and type in Tim Shepard, and you can get these in Kindle or in paperback. And like I said, I've got the Prairie Ghosts in paperback. I've got the where to go? I was trying to get back over here. Um, ah,
return to the
come on.
prairie.
Yeah, I've got Return to the Prairie on my tablet, so it's kind of hard to see with it. Get it out of the glare. But anyway, I've got it on Kindle, so you can get them in both formats. And so make sure you go check out his books, get his books. We were going to talk about Christine's books, but like I said earlier, she had oral surgery this week, and so she's not up to doing a lot of talking. But okay, Tim, after those two books, well, Lynn, Christine, y'all got any questions for Tim on those books? I know in private chat y'all been burning it up, and I guess you think that Tim's supposed to be reading all the private chat because you've been asking a lot of questions in there.
Well, one of the questions that I asked is when the lady fell to her death or jumped or whatever at the Capitol, did they see her as before she fell or after she fell? And did they,
Good question.
They see her as before she fell most often. I know that there is a video that will pop up on YouTube occasionally. It's called the Kansas State Capitol Ghost. It is an image of a parking lot when it pops up on YouTube, and it is a woman she's wearing bell-bottom pants and a fringe jacket, and she is walking across the parking lot. She walks about 30 feet across it and disappears. That is the underground parking garage underneath the Capitol building. It was added in 2004, somewhere right around there. One of the security guards stole the footage of that particular spirit moving across there. And every once in a while, he's able to get it up. Now, I didn't know it originally, but Kansas has somebody that watches social media at all times to see what's going on, including YouTube. And they will get that video jerked down within 2 to 3 days after it goes up on YouTube.
Wow.
and the woman
Wow.
that was unmarried and pregnant, did they ever hear the
In the
baby
theater?
cry? Yeah. Do they ever hear babies cry from the
No,
baby?
no, they hear her crying. In fact, there's a video on YouTube from 2006 where there's a group of investigators that is inside the building and they're having a conversation right in front of the stage. And for about 3 minutes of that video, you can hear her crying in the background. They don't react to it at all. They don't hear it with their ears. It's when they go back and they're looking at their own videos and stuff, they can actually hear her crying. They didn't hear it
Wow.
with their ears. It was kind of neat to see that one.
Yeah, they're at the Jayhawk Theater now.
Right.
That see here was the to me the hypocrisy of that era in that if a woman is found out to be pregnant, she is ostracized and demeaned, and in this situation, made to feel like her only option is suicide when it takes two to tango.
Right.
Yeah, but men were not responsible for anything. It didn't matter.
I understand that. I mean, I do. That's what I'm saying. That was the hypocrisy of the era. Did they, and I mentioned that to say, did they ever find out who the father was?
No, not that I know of. So,
Okay. Yeah, that was because, I mean, yeah, I know nothing would have happened to him. I mean, like I said, that was the hypocrisy of the day, and it's sad. And, you know, hopefully, as a society, we've outgrown some of those mores
Right.
and social. What's the word I'm looking for? Standards, whatever.
Right.
You know, that says it's got to be this way. You know, but
right.
I mean, if a woman gets pregnant, she either had to agree to it or not, but there was somebody involved, somebody else
Right.
involved, you know, and he bears as much responsibility as she does, especially if it was unwanted, you know, in cases of rape and incest and things like that. There is still another person involved, and you know, they should be considered as well
Right.
in any actions pursued after the pregnancy, you know, because most men don't want to take responsibility. But anyway, didn't mean to get off into a philosophical discussion.
So are you planning on writing any more books? I mean, is there any more we can look forward to?
Right now, I'm in the middle of. I had to restart it. I was about 600 pages into a book on William Quantrill and his Raiders because I wanted to look at the history of all of them because there's a huge
Yeah.
history of these men. About 800, almost 900 men rode with him during the 5-year period of the Civil War,
Mhm.
most of whom
Wow.
had some very historical backgrounds. You've got a governor of Missouri. You have the James brothers, the younger brothers. Just huge. It was an era that produced, this group produced probably about, I would say probably about 10% of them became famous after the war was over for the things that they were doing on both sides, whether it was good or bad. George
Well,
Shepard becomes a sheriff. I mean, it's an interesting group that existed.
But do you have
yeah.
any favorite stories of your own personally from what you've written so far? Is there any that's your favorite?
I do, and Gina had asked earlier on the Facebook chat about Dorothy, and so I thought I would share this with y'all. Margaret Hamilton plays a big part in The Wizard of Oz, and she was actually the Wicked Witch of the West. Now, Margaret Hamilton was born in Hays, Kansas, which is about 3 hours from here, and she went on to a very illustrious career, both with The Wizard of Oz as well as stage and film. She became one of the early scream queens. We still talk about her in horror movies today. But her first real dark role was the Wicked Witch of the West. And she would make only 5 more appearances in her lifetime as the Wicked Witch. One of those happens in the city of Topeka in 1976 during this huge parade down Kansas Avenue where she dresses up as the Wicked Witch of the West. One of them occurs on a children's television program that probably everybody that is part of this group grew up with. She appeared on Sesame Street sitting next to Oscar the Grouch's trash can in her Wicked Witch costume.
I think I remember
They said that
that.
that episode traumatized children so badly, PBS never aired it again. In fact, there's no copy of that particular one. In season 4
Wow.
of the DVDs, that episode is missing. But PBS, in their infinite wisdom, decided they'd bring her back on another children's television program to correct their mistake. This one was all about pretending. Of course, they bring her back on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where during the course of 15 minutes, she would put on all of her makeup and costume to show what it took to become the Wicked Witch of the West. They say that one traumatized children so bad, PBS didn't want to air it again either. It is out on YouTube. Let's make that clear. You can find that episode that is out there. One of those happens on the Paul Lynde Halloween special. In 1975, she's on the Paul Lynde Halloween special introducing the band Kiss. She went on to say they were the scariest people she had ever met in her life. This is coming from a woman that was one of the scream queens. I just thought it was hilarious because it does tie into Kansas. Just because you've got the Wizard of Oz here, there are actually 2 copies of the movie out there as well. So when it appears
Yeah.
on television, pay attention because sometimes at the bottom of the screen it says that it's in Topeka, Kansas. Other times it says it's in Liberal, Kansas. Because when the movie came out the first time to the theaters, Topekans threw a fit about it. Dorothy could not have been from the city of Topeka because Topeka has too many tall buildings and rolling hills. It's not flat. So,
Yeah, but she is from Kansas.
right, exactly. Now we've got about 6 cities that go, Dorothy's from here. And it's like, no, Dorothy is from Liberal. Let's make this clear. It's on the movies.
Yeah, Liberal, Kansas. I remember that. All right. So you've answered the next question. I guess Christine was looking at the outline as to what's next.
Right.
Y'all didn't know Tim had basically finished his book, his next book, and
The computer.
his computer died.
Right.
And so he's reworking everything. So it'll be out hopefully within a year.
Hopefully within this year. I'm about 150 pages back into the rewrite now.
Okay, good.
So we're in there. I've still got a huge amount to do. I have probably one of the most detailed lists of who all the raiders were that is out there because I've compiled it from lots of different sources, and
Yeah.
that was like 100 pages of the book of the original one. So now I've got to type all that again.
Well, Tim mentioned it a minute ago, and I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but we haven't been pausing for commercials for our sponsors, and that's because they have their own playlist over on YouTube, and I've just been forgetting to mention them. So please go to our YouTube channel and go to the playlist Strange Journey Sponsors, and you'll see everybody that we're helping out here and their little videos, and we would love for you to visit them. And also, before we go, remember to go to our Strange Stuff page. You can get the watchers, those of you that are watching, but you can also get your I Believe shirts. I believe in ghosts, I believe in aliens, I believe in Bigfoot. What was the ones I was wanting to? I mean, you can see we have tons of stuff. The Krampus shirts, the Angel shirts, Paranormal Investigator. I like Bigfoot, and I cannot lie. And every time anybody sees that, they do sing it. And
I was just
So-
doing that in my head. So
Me too.
exactly, that's the point. And again, just before we go, make sure you check out Amazon.com for Tim Shepard and go check out his books. You can get them on Kindle and on paperback. So, any final thoughts, Lynn?
I can't wait for the next show when we talk to Christina, because I want to know what's going on in hers.
Yeah. Hers is going to be a little different.
I
I mean,
know.
she was supposed to be on this show, but because of the surgery, she couldn't. But I had already planned, because she can't really tell the story without
Telling the
the
story.
story. So we were trying to figure out a way to break it down. That's kind of why I wanted them both on the same show, so that she wouldn't feel pressured to tell the whole story and could just give us some highlights and some scenes. But we'll figure something out and do a show on that. In our Strange Authors series, we've already contacted Elizabeth Parker, and we have her scheduled for a show coming up in the next couple of months. I'm not sure when it is, but she'll be next in our Strange Authors series, where we talk to, because she has 3 books out. Christine, any final thoughts about Tim's books?
I just want to say, Tim, you're doing an amazing job. Keep it up. Don't let anybody tell you can't do it, because you're amazing. You can do it. You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Tim, final thoughts?
It's been fun. I enjoyed it. Looking forward to next time when we have, I'm trying to think. Next time is going to be Andrea and her husband, John.
Yep. Next show is the Grave Hunter Society, which I was going to share that. Andrea and John, gravehuntersociety.com. Researchers of the obscure and peculiar. So they're going to be our next show in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We'll have them on talking about all that, because they not only research like property and items and things like that, they also analyze EVPs and videos and things like that for investigators. So, all right, guys. We hate to do it, but it is that time. And like I said, in 2 weeks, the Grave Hunter Society, our other ET, Andrea, and her husband John will be here with us. Thank you, Christine, for being here. Thank you, Lynn. Tim, I appreciate you sharing your books with us, and hopefully all of the watchers out there, remember, the watchers, you'll go to our Strange Stuff page, SJ15 for 15% off. Wait a minute. I gotta get rid of that. Okay. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.